What's up, everybody? This is Mind Your Money with Miss Be Helpful, a show that highlights people and stories that will inspire you to get your money right. And today on the show, I'm super excited to talk to a personal finance expert and travel blogger, and her name is Nika. Welcome to the show, Nika.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Yaneli, for having
Of
me. I'm
course.
so excited to be here today, just being able to talk to your audience. So, thank you so much once again for the opportunity.
Girl, of course. So actually, a couple different interesting components that I think we have in common. We'll get into kind of a little bit of those details, which is why I think it's a great, episode for us to just jump into like some of the things that we both have in common. And then also, of course, I want to highlight a bit more of your story. So we'll get into that. But first, I always just really like to get started with two questions about money, jump right into money. And the first one is all about financial regrets. So we'll start with that one. And then after the too many questions, we'll come back and do our more formal intro. So,
Okay. Hmm.
what is something, either again, this could be like something that you spent money on that you bought, like a thing or purchase. It could be an experience, anything that you spent a lot of money on, like too much money, and you regret it to this very day. If you could go back in time and take it back and like redo life and not make this mistake, what would that be for you?
My biggest mistake financially was definitely more of like an experience that I didn't do correctly.
Mm,
I wasn't as educated on like 401ks and like the power of it when I first had my first job out of college. So I started it just as a part of, doing my benefits enrollment.
yeah.
And then after a while, I was like, I don't want this to be taken out of my check anymore. I want the money like now.
Oh no.
So I literally like stopped my 401k contributions like
Goodness.
with my first job, like out of college. And that was probably one of the biggest mistakes that I've made, like financially. Now that I'm like looking back at it, I'm like, oh my God, like I probably would have had like so much more money, even though like I was doing like, up to like the match, like that compound interest. I missed out on like all of that.
That is
So
so true. Yep.
yeah. So that's definitely like one of my biggest financial mistakes. And it's so funny because like I actually just shared like probably like 2 weeks ago like three financial mistakes like on my page, and that was like the first one.
Oh man, that's so crazy. I feel like a lot of people would think that, like, about just going back in time and being able to redo. I think with retirement investing is such a huge one. Either that they didn't really take full advantage of it. In your case, like you started and then you took it back. Now, I'm curious because when you noticed, was it because you saw like your pay stubs and you were like, hold up, I could like get a little bit more? Like what made you have that thought to like just
Yeah.
stop those so you could get more money?
Yeah, it was literally where it was like I was looking at my pay stub, so I saw, what was being taken out, and I was like, well, okay, I know I got to take out like my health insurance and
Hmm.
dental and vision, and I was like,
Right.
but why am I still putting into this 401k thing? I was like, I could get more money in my paycheck to take home, so I can like do more stuff with it. So that was literally like my thought process. Then obviously I was not thinking like, okay, build now, you'll you know reap the benefits later. I was more being very like short sighted, like
Mm-hmm.
let me get some of this money right now so I can like, probably like just do more things with it.
Right.
So
Oh
yeah,
my
it
goodness.
was really good.
That's crazy because I noticed like, well, two things. One is that you pay attention to your pay stub because most people do not. Like I don't know if I ever really did. When I remember when I was like a teenager, I remember getting my very first pay stub, and it was like a paper check and the pay stub was like right next to it. Like you had to tear off the pay stub and then the rest of the paper was your paycheck.
Right.
But a lot of people now with direct deposit, they don't even look at it because one, they don't have to, right? Because it's digital, that the money just gets direct deposited into their account and they don't really, there's no process to accept the pay stub, to look at it before you
Exactly.
can get the money. Versus old times, you had to look at it because it was all on the same paper. So I
Exactly.
think people just don't really look at it. And so I'm actually impressed that you, even though you were making a mistake financially, you know, a lot of people would say, but you were actually looking at your pay stub and paying attention to those numbers, which most,
Yeah.
especially young people, do not
Yeah.
do that.
I think for me, it was like, okay, like I knew that it was coming out, but I had
Yeah.
never really like calculated like, okay, how much of this is coming out? So I was so
Mm.
curious, and that's when I kind of went to the pay stub, and I was like, oh, like okay, like
Yeah.
this money's coming out, but I was like, retirement. I was like, I don't even know I don't know what I want to do in like 5 or 10 years. Why would I be like putting away like money like right now? And that was
Right.
just like ignorance on my part. Like I just didn't really see the benefit to it. So it was like, nah, I'm okay with the money right now.
Right, right. I rather, I mean, anybody who's young and not really paying too much attention would rather have it. So that makes sense.
Mhm.
The other thing I was gonna say actually was the fact that when you fill out, when you like sign up for your 401k,
Mhm.
you fill out the paper and you have to put like how much percentage. So it's interesting that later on you put like a dollar amount to it when you looked at your pay stub, because most people, they don't do that. When they'll be like, oh, I'll put 3%, or I'll put 4%, I'll put 7%, but they don't actually go into to calculating in the detail of like per paycheck, how many dollars is that every 2 weeks or every month. So it's funny
Exactly.
that the money actually kind of shocked you, or maybe like in your head, you maybe didn't think it was going to be that much.
Yeah, I feel like it was an okay dollar amount because it was like to get the match and it wasn't really much. But I was
Right.
just so like, oh, well, even if it was like, let's say like 200, like for the
Right.
month or every paycheck, I was still like, oh, I could do a lot with that, like right
Hmm.
now. So that was kind of my thought process with that. And it's crazy just thinking back on it now. I'm just like, what a crazy thing I did.
Right. And there's so many things like that, you know. I always ask this question because I feel like when you start creating content or talking about money or doing anything like that, people just assume, oh, you must be perfect with money, you just always
Right.
knew how to do. And it's like, no, we
No.
all of us make financial mistakes. And most of us, actually, that's how we learned, because we learned through financial mistakes. And unless you're studying to be a financial planner or an accountant or something like that, most people don't even get classes about money in college, in high school, or anywhere. So,
Mhm.
it's like for you, those mistakes, you won't forget, because like that was part of the learning. At least I see it that way, as like that's
Yeah.
how we taught ourselves through mistakes, which is sad.
Absolutely. I definitely think like that's true. And like it's crazy because it's like I do have like an accounting background and I
Yeah.
still made those mistakes. So that's why like I tell people all the time. And I also like, just talk with like my clients about this too, where it's like,
Yeah.
trust me guys, like I still make mistakes, or I have made mistakes, even like to this day with budgeting. Sometimes I have to still
Right.
make adjustments, so it's just like
Yep.
we are all human. So it's just, you just
Exactly.
kind of learn from it and you just move on. That's it. That's all you can do.
That's right. I love that. That's all you can do. Learn from it, move on. Don't pay attention too much. I saw a post actually, was like, if I'm talking to somebody,
Hmm.
I only want to hear about their problem once, because then after they tell me about the problem, the next thing we should be talking about is the solution.
Solution.
Because what's the point of staying focused, keep on talking about the problem over and over? It's like, okay, we get it. There's a problem, but festering on that, you're not ever really going to see past it. So you
Exactly.
make your money mistake, boom, it's done, move on.
That's it. Like my biggest thing is like before you kind of come into my space, like as a client, for example, I'm always like, just forgive yourself for any money mistake that like you've ever
Yes.
made. Like
Yep.
it's okay. Like I
Yep.
promise you it's okay. Like it doesn't make sense to dwell on that. Just use that as like a learning lesson to propel you on this financial journey. And I say like if you're already like reaching out to other like personal finance experts and reading up on it and just learning more about finances, you're already ahead of what you did before. So it's just like, please do not, you know, beat up yourself about things
Yep.
that you kind of done in the past, because
Right.
even the greatest or the gurus, you know, have made
Mhm.
mistakes. Even if people don't want
Exactly.
to say it, because I know a lot of times social media can be like a highlight reel where it's like all the great stuff, but it's like, yeah. And that's why I did share some of those mistakes that I've made, you know, as financial mistakes, because I'm like, I have made those mistakes even with an accounting background. So
Mhm.
it's okay,
Yeah.
guys.
That's awesome. So let's go ahead and talk about the opposite side of that. And then we'll jump into more about what you have already a little mentioned a little bit, like accounting background and where what you offer and what you do on social media. So we'll get to that in a second. But if you could share a time where you had the opposite experience. So instead of spending a bunch of money and like regretting it completely, you
Mhm.
actually spend a lot of money, and maybe somebody else will look at your budget and be like, Nika is bugging out. She's that's too much money to spend on that. I would never do that. But for you, Nika, you're like, no, I would do it again because
Yeah.
it was worth it for me with my budget, my financial situation, or my values made that worth it.
Mhm. This one is probably like a travel one.
Mhm.
I it was both where I spent maybe a lot, but I also like finessed, like travel hacked.
Yeah.
So it was like where I use like my travel hacking skills to have a 4 country trip in Europe back in 2019.
Ooh.
So
Yeah.
I travel hack my way there, but then like obviously like to go throughout the different countries and have a good experience, I spent like, you know, like a good chunk of money.
Right.
But everyone knows travel is life for me. So it may be like, whoa, that was a lot of money or like the time, but it for me, it's like, no, that was worth every single penny that I spent. That was probably one of the best trips that I've taken like to date.
That's amazing. So did you go completely by yourself?
No, I was actually with my significant other
Mhm.
back in 2019 for yeah, October 2019 we went there.
Nice. Oh, you got so lucky you did that right before COVID.
Exactly. Like it was literally like the perfect thing, and I think we ended up spending like it was like almost 2 weeks like between like
Wow.
the 4 countries. It
Mhm.
was like an amazing time. Like it was like
That's awesome.
perfect.
Yeah, for me, I'm similar to you. I feel like travel is a big deal for me. I know
Mhm.
plenty of people that go like, what's the big deal about travel? I don't need to go
Yeah.
anywhere. I just want to be in my home body. And I get it. I every time we have conversations about money, it comes back to that point that money is very personal. Personal finance is very personal. But for me, I absolutely agree with you. Traveling, creating experiences, I would never forget those trips that I've taken, never forget the experiences that I've had. And yeah, Europe is definitely one of the cooler, like, trips to do, like Euro trips, because you can go to so many countries in such a short period of time,
Exactly,
you know? Yeah.
exactly. And that's kind of what my thing was. I did want to do like a really big international trip. And I was like, if I'm going all the way over here, I need to hit up a couple countries.
Yes.
So yeah, just being able to navigate like that travel space,
Yep.
kind of like on a budget in a way, but I did splurge a little bit because it was like a really big trip. So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't regret that at all. It was like the best
Nice.
money spent ever.
Nice. All right. Well, now we already we know we have that in common, traveling, because I do love traveling. All right. So for everybody listening, if this is the first time that you're hearing from Nika or of Nika, Nika is the creator of Financially Winning on Instagram, and she's also a working professional that has a career in accounting as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But Nika, I think for anybody who's kind of less familiar with Financially Winning and also you and your work, tell them a little bit like of an introduction. What can they expect, when kind of learning about you, your brand, and the work that you're doing in as a personal finance expert and in the personal finance space?
Absolutely. So, as Yaneli mentioned, I am an accounting professional by day. And then I also run Financially Winning, which is basically an online platform, a personal finance platform. And I provide a variety of resources and tips to help individuals with their finances. Part of my services, I do offer like one-on-one coaching. That's more for like individual help, personalized help, because sometimes people do need like that one-on-one time. Like I can post all the content that I want, but
Right.
sometimes people need like that one-on-one attention. So I do offer that service. Basically, my goal is to help each of my clients to create a financial plan, like an action plan to improve their finances and eventually like build wealth. I focus
Nice.
on the fundamentals of finance because I think sometimes people forget that you need to crawl before you walk.
Oh,
So,
yes.
yes, so I focus on that. And then I also have an Etsy shop that's attached to Financially Winning because
Mhm.
I'm a very like visual person. So I created digital products that you can use to track like your debt payoff, savings, and different things like that. So that's kind of what Financially Winning is about. And then I am also a travel blogger, and that platform is Traveling with Nika. And, I've traveled to about 20 countries and about 24 states in the US. So, yeah, I feel like I wear a lot of hats. I wear a lot of hats, and yeah, so accountant, entrepreneur, YouTuber, and travel blogger because I like sharing my travel vlogs on YouTube. But yeah, I wear a lot of hats.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Yeah, I did forget to mention that you do a lot of travel blogging as well. And if you do follow Nika both on Financially Winning and Traveling with Nika, you'll see a lot of the content is kind of similar, like traveling, but also with a lens of personal finance. How much does it cost to be able to travel, how to be cost effective when you travel, and a lot of, kind of similar conversations. So definitely can appreciate that because I know like in the travel space, there's a lot of content, but then they don't really talk about how much it costs.
Yeah,
Then it's like, okay,
yeah,
is that
they do.
realistic
And
for
then
average
also,
people?
absolutely. And then I was gonna say also, even like when like I would share, hey, I got like a $20 round trip ticket. Here's how I did it, because it's
Right.
like, okay, you got a $20 round trip ticket, but like to where, what airline, like how did you get that?
Mhm.
So I
Yes.
share like all of those little like, budget like, travel hacks that's not necessarily travel hacking with a credit card.
Right.
That's not all travel hacking is about. You can use budget airlines and just budget travel tips as a whole to be able to, go places
Right.
for, the least possible amount of money.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point because most people hear travel hacking, they immediately think about credit cards now
Yeah.
because that's just the main thing in that industry. But it is true. There's so much more than just the travel credit cards that, or the rewards credit cards that is involved with planning a trip or saving money on travel. So that's actually a really good point.
Yeah.
Cool. So I just would love to learn a little bit more about your upbringing because I feel like a lot of times when we get to a certain point, we kind of like act like, oh, we are where we are, as if it's separate from where you grew up and your family life and early memories about money or money conversations. And I tend to think there's more connection than disconnection. They're more similar and related and directly connected
Yeah.
to how it is it that you ended up doing what you do now, why your passion comes from the things that you're passionate about. So I'm curious about that. Tell us about your upbringing, but then also in terms of like there's such a taboo around money in most families. So was it taboo, or were you more aware of money and talking about it and like the role that money played in your family's life?
Yeah, that's an amazing question because I definitely agree that your upbringing plays a huge part in just your overall like understanding of finances as a
Yeah.
whole.
Yeah.
Because it's like if you grew up with where it's like maybe you had access to a lot of money, you'll have a different experience from someone that maybe had a lack of.
Exactly.
Not that maybe having a lack of made that person's life like bad, but it's just a different experience. So I definitely agree with that. So I am Caribbean. I am from the Virgin Islands. I literally grew up on an 8.5 square mile island um,
Wow.
in the Virgin Islands. I would say I felt like I was probably always good with money, and you guys who are on video will see me doing like the quotations. um, because I did have like that math, accounting type background. I did start my accounting, my love for accounting began in high school because that was offered in the curriculum in the Virgin Islands. So
Yes.
I kind of always had that, like, yeah, I was good with like all the theory and the math and everything like that. But there was a lot to learn when I moved to the United States.
Mm.
So as like a dual citizen, I ended up moving from the Virgin Islands after I completed my associate's degree. I moved to Florida at age 18, all on my own. So I'll get into
Wow.
that. But my parents, I grew up with my parents being like the complete opposite. Like my dad was more of the spender and my mom was more of the saver. So I saw both sides.
Yep.
Growing up in our household, I could definitely like go to my dad to get like money just for getting money's sake. But then my mom was always like, well, what do you need this for? Like,
Mm.
it was
Do
always
you
like,
need it?
yeah,
Do you need it?
it
Right.
was always like a question. But then if I wanted just like money to spend, I would be
Yeah.
like, hi, daddy. Like, can I have like, $20? He won't
Yep.
really be like, oh, why do you want that? But my mom was always like, okay, what's the reason? So I saw both sides of it. And I think I probably join the two. Like I'm I'm a spender in a way where I like to spend, on value things.
Right.
However, I was very natural at the saving aspect of it. So I got that from like my both parents. But then as it relates to more like money in the Virgin Islands, we definitely know about generational wealth because it's
Mhm.
more where your parents are passing down like physical assets to you. Like they
Mhm.
have land or they have like a home that they are passing on to you. So they may not have had like investments like in the US, but there were things that you kind of like built and passed down through your family, like, those physical assets.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. It's so interesting that you think of generational wealth in America consistently always thinking about a trust fund or thinking about, investments they pass down, but it takes so many forms,
Mhm.
generational wealth. And to think, yeah, like that makes so much sense in the Caribbean that you would expect to pass the land
Right.
down to the next, generation so that they have a foundation, a place to either build a new home, reconstruction, just land, farmland. There's so many benefits to that. So it makes a lot of sense that you would say that, and that awareness of generational wealth coming specifically from being a person with Caribbean ancestry. It's like, or not even in your case, it's not even Caribbean ancestry. Like you were born and raised there. So you saw it every day, people referencing, land and the house and things like that. It was actually a lot, probably more normal, I think, than a lot of people might assume.
Yeah, it was definitely like normalized, and especially also being like a business owner. Like, I grew up where my mom, like, she, had, even though she worked, there was like business, but I also saw my parents really hustle. So don't
Mm.
like, they were, hustlers. Like my mom
Yep.
would work, part-time jobs sometimes. My dad would always work extra. So I also saw them work very hard to get those assets and to, build a comfortable lifestyle for myself and my siblings.
Mm.
And I think definitely like my work ethic comes from my both parents.
Yeah.
But when it came to actually like utilizing the money, my dad was more of like, well, he's kind of like, I worked hard, we can spend this money. My mom was more like, let's preserve this. So it
Right.
was it was like crazy just seeing like the both sides.
Yeah. But that's kind of nice because when you think about it, it means that you got to see a little bit of both, as opposed to a lot of people, they just see one and then they choose to either repeat it and be the same, or they choose to be the total opposite because they maybe they disagree with their parent. But in your case, you really got to see both sides and see like which one maybe would serve me best or would fit more with how I want to be.
Mhm.
And and then kind of make your own choice. So as opposed to just like, oh, I never knew, I only had parents that were very conservative and frugal and saving all the time. I never really got that other experience. If
Right.
that were the case, who knows how you might end up. Maybe you might feel like spiteful and then you might be like a spender all the time
Right.
because your parents never really showed you spending. So it's nice actually to think that you had one of each, of like
Mhm.
examples of each one in your own household.
Yeah, I totally. And I think that it's good to have the mix, as you said, because I didn't only see like one side of money where
Right.
I knew that it's like money is like a tool. You know what I mean? Like I didn't really see it as, well, I was lacking or I had too much. It was like a good mix where I was, my parents were comfortable spending, but then also it was where I also saw where we have this thing in, we say like you have to save for a rainy day. But that's the extent of kind of like the money conversations per se. It was more like save, 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 because in the Caribbean, well, the Virgin Islands, I can say specifically, we don't have like that access to like, oh, saving from an investment
Mhm.
perspective. So
Right.
that was a completely new world for me when I moved to Florida, literally like on my own without my family to go to school. So then I had to learn about the US side of things, like, okay, oh, that's what this 401k thing is about.
Right.
Couple years back, that's when I kind of learned more about like IRAs and 529 plans. And I was like, oh, okay. In the Virgin Islands, people would save for their kids' college, but they would just save. It would be where it's just the money, like the dollar, is going in the bank account. It wasn't where the dollar was going in, but then in 18 years, it would be,
Right.
20, you know? So I knew about that saving aspect, but in terms of like that investing and all of those accounts, I knew nothing about that.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this is actually probably a good way to segue to, or
Sure.
to transition to that point of like, what was that like? You just left the Virgin Islands. You're 18 years old, and you get to Florida, and you're by yourself. Like that is insane. Like my parents immigrated to the U.S., but they were a little older. My dad was like in his late 20s,
Mhm.
early 30s, and my mom came a few years after that. So they're like a little bit more of a fully formed adult at that point to figure out, work as an adult and like figuring that out,
Yeah.
those things out. But at 18, I can't imagine, like, what was that like?
It's crazy because like that's actually like a norm for us, like in the Virgin Islands. Community college was free. So it
Mhm.
was kind of like a natural progression where after you finish high school at around like 16, you would go to community college because it was free for Virgin Islanders. You do the 2 years, you get your associates, and by then your parents are definitely like pushing you for like more higher education. It was
Yeah.
literally like the thing. And I always talk about where I kind of felt like I knew about like that American dream because like I was a dual citizen. So I was born in the US and then, but I grew up in the Virgin Islands. So it was like, okay, I knew I could, go to the US at any point, but it was where it was like I was gonna get everything that I could from the Virgin Islands, like in terms of education. And then once like my parents were like, okay, great, you satisfied that. It's time for you to go, you like to get your bachelor's degree. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how that happened.
Got it.
And honestly, it's kind of wild thinking back, like, yeah, I was 18 years old. It's like I literally went to like Florida. I didn't have like immediate family there.
Mhm.
And I literally just went to school. Like I applied for like two schools in the US and I got into both. And then I picked Florida because I was like, well, Florida is close to the Virgin Islands. I can go
Right.
home faster.
Yeah.
And it was cheaper. So that's kind of how I ended up, kind of, I guess, picking my school and then going to, school to pursue my bachelor's in accounting.
Mm, got it. So then you kind of took that from high school because you said in high school you had some classes in accounting and you kind of figured like I want to focus on that. Was that like you knew you wanted to do that or did it just make sense to continue since you were good at it in high school?
Yeah, it was more where it's like it was continuing to do that. I also wanted to be a lawyer, but then I didn't like the reading aspect of it. I was more of the hands-on math type person. So I was
Yep.
at like both. Even though I did well with like literature and like English, I still really excelled and I enjoyed the accounting. So that was like a natural like thing for me to study while I was in college.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I ended up was like, okay, let me do accounting. And that's kind of how I ended up picking my major to, get my bachelor's in accounting because my associates was in business.
That makes sense. That
Mhm.
makes a lot of sense. So when you came, did you kind of know you wanted to stay and live in the US, or were you like, maybe I'll just go get my bachelor's and then go back home to the Virgin Islands and, work in accounting or business? Or did you have a plan to like really stay and build your life here in the US from then on?
I think I didn't really have a plan at first. Honestly, it
Yeah.
was like, let me get this degree before my parents, like,
Yep.
like make sure they're happy, like get this education. And then it was like, let me see what opportunities come up for me, because the good thing is that being a dual citizen, I definitely acknowledge that privilege because I could just navigate between the two places like however I wanted to. I could just pick up and go back to the Virgin Islands and not worry about, not being a citizen or not being like a resident there. Or I
Right.
could have just like be like, okay, I just want to stay here. I'm a US citizen. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
I think for me, I knew that I did have that privilege and I acknowledged that. So it was more where thankfully I didn't have to really worry about, oh, what am I gonna do after this? It was more like if an opportunity comes up, probably in either place, I'll go, where that fits.
Right. Right. That's so interesting.
Mhm.
I feel like, I mean, or maybe I'm just, I don't know. I have this impression that in the Virgin Islands, because it's a lot of Americans think of it as like, oh, if you wanted to move to the Virgin Islands, you can move there because it's US territory and it should be, it's just like going to another state kind of thing. And a lot of people think of it that way.
Yeah.
Is that like common over this is so random, but I'm just so curious, like life growing up there, is that a common thing where you see people coming and going US there and from there to the US and that's like totally normal? Or, and because I think the Caribbean is so big on tourism where people travel, but then they leave. So I'm curious if it's more like expats with some form of like permanency there or permanent presence there, or if it's more like some of the other Caribbean islands where tourism is just a big thing, but people don't really stay longer when they vacation, they could just go back.
Yeah, makes sense. Great question. So the Virgin Islands is made up of the British side and then also the
Yeah.
US Virgin Islands. So I actually grew up on the British side of the Virgin Islands. So for
Mm.
that, you would be considered an expat if you were a US citizen that came in.
Right.
So, for example, my dad is from the British Virgin Islands. That's where he was born and he grew up there. So I naturally got his citizenship, and that's where I grew up. So if you're going to like the US Virgin Islands, yeah, it's basically like you're going to another state.
Yeah.
But if you're more going to the British Virgin Islands, then no, you would need to have like, get like, your visa and different things to be able to live and work there, of course, and things like that. So it's a difference. It's like two different worlds on the US and British side. So it's like,
Wow.
yeah, the US is fine. It's easy, if you're trying to when I say easy, I mean like it's like, yeah, it's another state because it's a US territory. It
Right.
would be like if someone wants to maybe go to Puerto Rico, it would be the
Mhm.
same type of thing. Because Puerto Rico is another US territory. But
Right.
then if they want to go to the British Virgin Islands, like where I grew up, it would be like, okay, you got to do some, paperwork, immigration, and all of that. So yeah.
Right. That makes sense. That makes a lot of
But we
sense.
have a big expat, population in the British Virgin Islands. Actually more from like other Caribbean islands. And
Mm.
then also UK citizens because we are
Of
British.
course.
So UK citizens sometimes would reside there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It reminds me of Bermuda. They're very similar, where they have a lot of British people going to live there. It's like, oh well, they just, they have dual, they share citizenship, so they could just come and go. Yeah,
Exactly. And that's one of the benefits of being, a Virgin Islander on the British side, because yeah, you can get access to UK citizenship because we're a British territory.
that's awesome. So, and in your case, you also had U.S. Citizenship, so you pretty much have a
Yeah.
lot more choices. That's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Lucky, lucky. All right, cool. So let's transition to like what your life is like today. I mean, I know that you work full time in accounting by
Yeah.
day, but I think a lot of times people just like to keep their life super private, especially when it comes to money. And so
Mhm.
it's interesting that with you, you actually decided to share both with travel blogging and with your more financial content on financially
Right.
winning about like your decisions around money. Creating a brand and being a visible face with, resources and information,
Right.
and things that you sell to help other, to help your clients and other people to like get better with their finances. But I think a lot of people, they would rather not, because they feel like going public is like a little, kind of like opening up the closed doors and telling everybody what skeletons you have in your closet, and it's still a lot very like of a taboo topic. So
Mhm.
what was it that made you decide like, okay, from my life now, it makes sense, and I want to actually talk to people about the way my money choices are being made in the way that I would recommend doing things.
Yeah. I think it came like naturally for me in a way. And then I also thought that I was kind of filling a gap, especially more for my Caribbean followers, especially Virgin Islanders.
Mhm.
So I have never really seen anyone, from my communities kind of doing something like this. And I
Mhm.
was like, well, I have the education background. I have the knowledge over the years of, just working in accounting and just learning from some of those mistakes or just financial things that I've read about and learned about and taught myself. And I
Right.
was like, why not? I was like, why not? Why not share? And then of course, there are some things that you would still kind of maybe keep private just for privacy purposes. The
Right.
world is kind of crazy out there sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think just the general idea of money, I wanted people to know that you can get right with your finances. And
Yeah.
that's why I've been pushing financially winning so much, especially to people in my own communities, because yeah, you can probably Google like, okay, what's a budget? But then you're
Right.
gonna get lost in a bunch of articles, right? And then that may not be the correct medium for you. So maybe
Right.
hearing it
Mhm.
from me, on an IGTV live or a Facebook live, or seeing me do, a 30-second reel about a money topic,
Yeah.
or seeing me post like budgeting tips that would more relate
Yep.
to, people that know me and people who don't even know me. Just
Yep.
seeing, another young Black woman doing it and knowing that, wow, like, if Nika is doing this, like I can definitely, give this a shot. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that was kind of like my big idea with financially winning. It was always something where I guess I kind of did on the side. Like I always talk to people about money. I always encourage my family and my friends and just people around me to like, make sure you guys are saving, make sure you guys are, learning more about investing and things like that. So it was kind of like natural for me to kind of have this platform
Yeah.
called Financially Winning. And that's kind of how I came up with the name, because I was like, well, I want people to win financially. And I was like, like at first I was just gonna name it like just like Miss Nika Debt Free. And I did have that for a while. And then I
Mhm.
was like, no, that does not, I was like, that doesn't like, like exude like what I wanna
Right.
show people.
People.
And I was like, Financially Winning. I was like, that's the name. And that's
Love
kind
it.
of how like Financially Winning was officially, birthed. And it was also after I had already paid off two of my student loans.
Ooh.
So I also share, my own personal like debt free story on my
Yeah.
platform as well.
That's amazing. So tell us a little bit about that too, because I remember a couple weeks ago I did like a quick poll on my Instagram because I was like trying to find people that are both considered a millennial and
Mhm.
also doing both paying off debt and investing at the same time. Because there's always conversation about people having to pick like, are you going to invest or should you pay off debt? But now more and more millennials are starting to say, why do we have to pick
Right.
between one or the other? We could do both. Like you can invest and pay off debt. And you put that you are millennial and that you are investing and paying off debt at the same time. And I remember being like, I got to reach out to her. And because that's something that I think more people need to talk about. So tell us a little bit about that, like the debt journey that you have, where you're at now versus where you were, and what your big goals around debt freedom are.
Absolutely. So I am happy to report today at the recording like of this podcast episode, I am only $2,000 and
Ah,
$2,090 away from
that's
saving up my
amazing.
last dollar that I will ever be putting towards student loan.
Wow,
Ever.
congratulations.
So basically, I started this journey officially last year in
Mhm,
2020.
mhm.
Um, and it was like, I knew I wanted to like get rid of the student loans. That was always like the idea.
Right.
So when I graduated from my MBA program at the end of 2018, they give you the 6 months, the grace period that I did
Right.
not even bother looking at. So
Most people don't.
yeah, I was like, okay, y'all gave me 6 months. Like, I'm not even looking at this. So
Yeah.
then, June, July came around, I got my first like payment due. I was like, oh, okay. I went on like, the income repayment plan. I was like, I know I want to work on this, but not for 2019. Let me just kind of finish out a couple other like financial goals that I had and that I
Yeah.
was working on. And then I was like, okay, 2020, that'll be when I start like tackling the debt. So 2020 came around and I remember I was like, oh, when I get my tax refund, I'll put like, a couple hundred like towards like my principal. Like that's
Right.
maybe when I'll kind of start. So then of course pandemic is happening,
Ugh.
starting to hit us like February, then March it really hit us. So
Right.
then I was like, okay, never mind on that. Like I think I made like a $400 like principal payment in February,
Mhm.
but that was it. I was like, I am not gonna be like putting down like all this money again. I said, never mind. I'm gonna just kind of like keep this money and like, kind of save up in a way
Right.
to kind of put towards like maybe like a emergency fund.
Right.
And then I was like, okay, I kind of wasn't like fearful anymore around like June 2020. So then at that point, I was like, all right, I'm gonna pay off two of these student loans. So that's kind of when I really, really like officially like started like the journey of paying
Nice.
down my $21,854 of student loan debt.
Wow.
So yes, that's when that started.
That is amazing. So you had multiple different loans, but
Yes.
the total amount was over 21,000. And you
Yep.
said, I'm just going to go ham. Like I'm going to aggressively throw
Pretty much.
every extra dollar at these so I could be done.
Yes, I was very dedicated to the cause. I was like, especially because we were in the middle of a pandemic, I was like, I do not want this debt anymore. And then when
Yeah.
we did the forbearance. I was like, this is God just telling me. After the couple of months and I was comfortable with where I was at with the emergency fund and stuff, I was
Yeah.
like, girl, nah, you could start paying off these, student loans.
Yeah.
Like, don't be too fearful. I mean, I had a stable income, didn't really have any change in my circumstances. Thankfully, I'm, very
Yeah.
thankful for that, because of course a lot of people lost their jobs and
Yep.
got hours cut, and I was grateful that I did not experience that. So when I kind of got out of my own head is when I was like, all right, it's time to go.
Right.
So I paid off those first two. The third one was paid off in October 2020. The fourth one was paid off in January 2021. And then now I'm down to the last two. So because of the possible talks of maybe student loan forgiveness,
Mhm.
what I did was I got the balance in February. I think I got it down to under the 10,000.
Yep.
So then, and then to gain like some, interest on that, compounded interest on the savings, what I did was I opened a separate high yield savings account for my student loan payoff. So since
Uh,
February, I've been putting into that account because I do have federal loans, so they're not due until
right.
September under the current, forbearance
Right.
laws.
Right. So that's smart because now everything's paused. It's not
Yep.
growing. You got it under right under 10,000. And then you're just like, you know what? I'll wait because waiting is not hurting me right now with interest. And if new laws do come from this administration where it's going to be $10,000 forgiveness per person, then you're covered. So it's like you kind of thought strategically, let me get to a point where either way, I can just wait and see what's going to happen and nothing bad is going to happen while I wait.
Exactly.
That's
And from
nice.
a net
Yeah.
worth calculation, it's going to be net zero anyways, because even though my balance would still be on Navient, the money is in an account. So I was like, yeah, I'll be like debt free when I'm done with the student loans, because that was, the only like debt that I had, that I was, paying down. Thankfully, I do not have a car loan anymore. I had a small one, but that was paid off, previously. I did not have any credit card debt, thankfully. So I was like, okay, all I have is these student loans. That's like, what we consider like what they say, non-mortgage type of debt,
Right.
whatever. So basically just making sure that I was done with anything that would be consumer or whatever they classify student loans as. I was like, I'm going to have this money set aside. And once I'm done, I won't have to put another cent towards my student loans, whether I click the button and click submit and wipe it out because I have the money. So that's the thing. I'm not waiting on the government because I'm like,
Right.
I'm not relying on them to do anything. However, I will give myself that benefit of gaining that compound interest with the money that I'm
Yeah.
saving, because that's like $10,000
Yeah,
basically.
it's going to grow exactly, and it's going to grow. And then if they announce that there is not going to be any loan forgiveness, then you just pay it off in one shot and you're done and it's zero. And like you already prepared to do that, but it would be nice if you didn't have to do that. If there was 10,000 of forgiveness and now you can just keep that money saved plus the interest that it accrued. So obviously that's the ideal, but you're preparing either way, which I think is super, super smart.
Yep. Yep. So
That's
yeah,
really
I'm
smart.
gonna be done, May
Yay.
2021. Like I'll, transfer my last amount that I'll technically owe,
That's
and it'll
amazing.
it'll be there, just
Woohoo.
I'm so excited. Like it's been a crazy like 11 months, honestly. But I did a lot in that 11 months to be able to get to this point. But I don't
Yeah.
want people to be discouraged, if they hear my story, to be like, well, I don't have 21K to just,
Right.
put towards student loans.
Right.
Of course, my financial situation would not be yours, but that doesn't mean, maybe from an income perspective, or I did have financial windfalls, quote unquote, during the journey. If you go on my Instagram page, I do share like my monthly breakdown. So if I put any extra that's really not, maybe from like my regular income, I would say, hey, like I got a refund for something and they gave
Right.
me $1,000. So that's how I added more to this, because I want to be able to share as
Yep.
much as I can. So like in April, for example, like I was able to put a chunk towards that savings to accelerate that payoff,
Yep.
just because I did get a refund for something that I was not expecting. I had already paid it before. I got the refund. I was like $1,700, and I was like, oh my god, like I'm gonna put it towards the student loan payoff. And then of course,
Yeah.
if you're paid biweekly, that there's some months you get paid 3 times.
Mm.
So fortunately for me, that was a month that just came. So I was able to kind of like put a portion of that extra paycheck towards that. So I don't want people to be discouraged if you don't think like your income may not be similar. You can do what you can on your income and your financial journey. I'm just here to show you what I'm doing, but you can
Mhm.
apply those same principles, that same mindset of, if I do get extra money, I will put it towards my goals, or I would put it towards something that will make me happy, if that's like just going to the spa, or a quick trip or something. Just being able to utilize your money for you, because it's not all about just saving everything. You can spend money too, because I spent
That's
money
right.
on this journey. And as you guys know, I am a travel blogger, so I did take trips
Yeah.
while
Yeah.
I was, paying off and conquering these student loans. So definitely just want to be an encouragement to other people that may hear my story and may be
Right.
like, 21K, like 11 or 12 months, that may be like, whoa. But just remember that, you know, it might not be 21K for you, and that's okay. But it might be 2,000 for you. It may be a paid off credit card for you. It may be 1 month worth of emergency fund for you for the first time.
Yes.
So celebrate those, money milestones, whatever they are.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's so true. Even if it doesn't have the exact same details, doesn't match yours, you can still learn from the strategies. You can still get motivation and inspiration from somebody else's story. And that's the beautiful thing about it. Like, finding so many other influencers who talk about money on social media has been so amazing for me, because when I was paying off all of my debt, I had a similar amount of debt to you, but this was back in 2015. And
Mhm.
I didn't see anybody really making a community about this. It was just kind of getting started,
Yeah.
and there were a lot of bloggers, but not a lot of personalities that were like revealing who they are. A lot of blogging was very private, like,
Right.
anonymous blogging and things like that. And it's great for information, but I need more than information. I need a connection with another human, and I need to be able to go to events and talk to people. And the way Instagram and YouTube and especially now even with TikTok has grown to become a place of community around people that are financially minded is like amazing.
It's
We're so
mind
lucky.
blowing. Like
Yeah.
social media, like I know people like, they're like, oh, I hate social media. I'm like, social media, when used correctly, it's a plethora of information. And I
Yes.
think
Yes.
that's the thing where like we're financially winning. And even my travel platform, when people can see like someone that maybe looks like them or have some
Hmm.
type of relation,
Yep.
something that they can relate to, like, just for me, like, I'm a young woman, right? I'm in the accounting industry or business, I'm Black, someone may be able to relate to that. Someone may be able to relate that I'm Caribbean.
Yep.
It may be that they relate because they have a similar amount of student loans or just debt, maybe how I showcase like the tips on my page, they gravitate towards that. Maybe it's just my personality and people like that,
Yep.
so that's what it's all about. Like having different mediums of getting people the information. And that's always been like my number one goal with my
Yeah.
platform.
I love that. Love that. Because then people pick and choose what they, what resonates with them the most.
Exactly.
I love that. Love that. All
Mhm.
right. Well, this has been so great. I just have loved learning about your story, Nika, like meeting you, getting to know you better. From, just being on Instagram, obviously we've kind of like linked, but was such a great way to do a deeper dive to know your story and your passion for the work that you do. The last thing I always like to end with before I ask you the final question is just sharing, where people can find you, how they can reach out to you if they like what you're doing, connecting with you. And we've already mentioned your Instagram at financially winning. Anything else that you would say to people who might have heard your story and be like, oh my gosh, I love the way Nika shared her story. I want to reach out to her.
Yeah, absolutely. So, financially winning, as Yaneli mentioned, I am on Instagram and I'm also on Facebook because, like, Facebook is a big platform for my Caribbean peeps. So, I also make sure I'm always accessible on Facebook as well. So, financially winning on Facebook. My Etsy shop is financiallywinning.etsy.com. That's where you can purchase any instant download printables that you may like or want to check out. That's my website. And then traveling with Nika, you can find me on YouTube. I am a travel blogger, so you can watch my vlogs and all my travel tips on YouTube as well. And then same Facebook and also Instagram for traveling with Nika. So yeah, that's where you
Love
can
it.
basically find me.
Love it. And I will link everything in the notes as well. But just in case, if you are making a note of it, Nika's name is spelled Niqua. So when you're typing in traveling with Nika, just remember to spell it correctly so you can find her.
Absolutely. Thank you
All
so much.
right. Of course. Okay, so I've got the last question, which is one of my
Okay.
favorites. I open with great juicy questions, and I like to end with this one, which I think is another great juicy question too. And this one is all about like a money message or a money mantra that you would share if you could on every physical dollar bill. So people
Oh,
transact with money all the time, and we don't really pay. I mean, everybody knows, dollars here in the US is
mhm.
in God we trust, right? But what is the actual message that you would actually like to put there for people to think about when you're making transactions with money?
Mhm.
What would that physical dollar bill say to remind people that personal motto about money, whether it's encouragement or just a money motto, money mantra, money slogan that they can just keep with them and remember that that's so important about money when they're going to use money?
Okay, so I think I have like two that I normally like to say as like my money mantra. The
Okay.
first one is the wealth I desire, I will achieve. So that's my first one, because I definitely think that everyone is capable of building wealth. Don't worry if your path does not look like someone else's, but you are definitely capable.
Love that.
And then my other one would be wealth and abundance flows through me. So I'm always, just positively speaking, to myself and knowing that I am putting in the work to
Yep.
build wealth, and that everything would, kind of like just come to me because I am, that magnet.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that they're both phrased like affirmations, more than anything, because that's really what a mantra is. It's really affirming either a belief or a guiding principle over and over again so that you remind yourself of it, you don't forget it, and you keep it, top of mind, especially when it comes to money. We tend to get very emotional with money. And if you can just channel back a little bit more your reason and logic and your planning, and that mantra can help you to remember that. With these, I love they're more affirmations. So really telling yourself, if I do this, this will come to me. If I stay this way, positive, if I think this way, this is what will happen as a result. So I love that. I will definitely share your dollar. I'm going to put your face on the dollar bill and put that mantra over it.
Okay,
So you can
nice.
share it around and let
Love
everybody
it.
know.
I love it.
It's
I
super
love
cute. I always tell people like, if you've never seen yourself on a dollar bill, get ready because it's definitely fun to see, you on the dollar. So I'll
that's
share
so
it once I
dope.
have it.
That's so dope. I love it.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Nika. I loved learning your story. I will absolutely let you know once this episode is live and ready to go. And yeah, thank you for just telling us your story, your journey, and sharing with everybody listening and watching on YouTube as well, where they can connect with you. Keep doing the awesome work that you're doing. I cannot wait to see you post about making that last payment and being 100% debt free, girl. You deserve it after the past 11 months that you've been through.
Yes,
Keep it
I
up.
cannot wait. And once again, Yaneli, thank you so much for, affording me this opportunity to come on your platform. I just love sharing with other people, and I look forward to connecting with, some of you guys that would, follow me after hearing this podcast or viewing this YouTube video. So definitely thankful to you, Nelly, and thanks again.
If you like this video, which I'm sure you did because the video was the bomb, then you're going to want to watch all the other episodes of the Mind Your Money with Miss Be Helpful podcast. And they're all right here in this playlist. So click the playlist to watch those episodes. And if you haven't subscribed to this YouTube channel yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. Click the subscribe button right now so you can get videos every single week and to join Team Be Helpful right here. That's all I have for you guys. Till next time, peace.